A human life is sacred. It is sacred in its being born. It is sacred in its living. It is sacred in its dying. A human life remains sacred by our remembering. Sylvia's life remains sacred by our remembering. We are gathered here this summer afternoon to lift up the name of Sylvia J. Woodburne. Today, we commit to the preciousness of memory a life that was mingled with our own. Sylvia's beautiful, long, and quite meaningful life. Those whom we love do indeed leave us, and when we lose them, no spoken word can ever lessen our grief. But who they were can never leave us. What they were can never leave us. The strength of their presence, the force of their convictions, the levity of their laughter, the brightness of their smile, and oh my, did Sylvia have a smile, and the warmth of their love. These are ours, always interfused with our thought and blended with our lives. Unitarian Universalist Joel Miller writes, "Death reminds us to treasure life. Although we can't say with certainty what will happen when we die, we know that we are part of a great stream of life that began long before we were born and will flow on long after we are gone. We share immortality in our connections to the universe and through the small, unique ways we change the world as we live in it." I'm thinking of those small and unique ways that Sylvia changed our world. And I came across this quote by Robert Muller, and I think they capture, at least in part, the essence of Sylvia. Her vision was to live a life so full that at the end of it, she could say, "I have loved my life with passion, embraced it with fervor, cherished every single moment of it. I will have contemplated with wonder the sky and the running clouds, my brethren, the humans, my sisters, the flowers and the stars. I will have read and written, sung and danced, shown compassion to others, and seen the world. I will have feasted unceasingly on the treasure of life in all its forms." We've all been blessed by Sylvia's life, and we share something precious in common. At one point or another, to a small degree or by a large degree, by Sylvia and the life of Sylvia has been woven into our own lives by blood, by marriage, by birth, by family ties, by working side by side, by music and theater, by love of reading, by her sense of humor, by passionate liberal politics, by travel, by volunteering, by the League of Women Voters, by Wings and CASA, by neighborhood, by church, by Sylvia's beloved women's group, by friendship, by meeting heart with heart. And so this afternoon is a time to celebrate how our lives have been touched and changed by Sylvia. It's a time to tell stories and share memories, a time to laugh as Sylvia would laugh if she was here. It's also a time to shed tears and to touch that empty and tender place in our hearts. It's a time truly to say thank you. Thank you, Sylvia. Thank you, beloved wife and partner in life's adventure. Thank you, Mom. Thank you, grandmother. Thank you, great-grandmother. Thank you, teacher and mentor. Thank you, friend. Thank you, for the generous, caring, spirited, authentic, and loving life that was yours. And so, in that spirit, I invite Christine, Paul, and Schuyler to light a candle in celebration of Sylvia's life. Sylvia would like a round of applause. I have great respect for the way Sylvia approached her death in a very matter-of-fact way. She said to me, Sky, when we talked, that She had absolutely no regrets, that she feels she has lived a full life filled with so much love. I asked Sylvia if there were any readings that she would like to have included in today's celebration of life, and she looked to her past for these two selections from the 23rd Psalm, which many of you know, and then also reading from the first letter of Paul to the Corinthians. These traditional words. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. And these words from Paul, and they really do describe Sylvia. Love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud. It does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking, it's not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. At the end of our days, three things will remain: faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is love.
asked me to speak about Sylvia, I was honored to accept. We had known each other for almost 25 years. As I prepared for today, I reached out to people Sylvia volunteered with. She's an unsung hero, and I'm happy to sing some of their words in her honor. My first connection with Sylvia was the Senior Companion Program at Catholic Charities. The program connects healthy seniors to meaningful volunteer experiences, supporting older adults in helping them maintain their independent living. If you wanted to volunteer for this program, you had to volunteer 20 hours per week. Sylvia, unlike most of the volunteers, didn't require the monthly training, but she was a real asset because at the end of each training, she was the first with a list of questions. And these questions often were the holes in the training that she knew the other companions would need to be successful. The most challenging guideline for her was boundaries. She did not understand why she could only serve 20 hours a week when 30 might be better and the client might need it. Why couldn't she drive them on the weekends? Just because the care plan said didn't seem to matter. She was often paired with clients who were reluctant to receive the service. She had a knack. She would let them know that she needed her 20 hours per week and that they were really helping her out if they would take her on. And pretty soon, they were thick as thieves, Sylvia's words. When Senior Companions expanded to 4 counties, she had the opportunity to move from being a companion to a VISTA, Volunteer in Service to America, or the Domestic Peace Corps. She enthusiastically accepted my offer, understanding the need for expansion, but also the challenges that come with change. She worked with 2 other 20-something VISTAs, Stefan and Priscilla. Again, she was unlike her peers in her working environment. They were computer savvy, she was learning. She liked to talk out loud while she was working and on breaks while working on the New York Times crossword puzzle. Good thing that headsets were available for the younger, and it created an acceptable workspace. She was a good teacher, but her phrases, quotations, and references were often met with blank stares and explanations that led to her classic, "Oh dear," and she would wring her hands. And that ended in laughter by all, and everything went just fine. Stefan sent this message: Sylvia was so kind, welcoming, thoughtful, curious, and kept in touch with me all of these decades. I sincerely mourn her passing. She never stopped being a companion to other seniors. She continued reading to one client until he passed, started helping others, providing transportation and anything they needed, especially reading. As my career advanced at Catholic Charities, she told me, just let me know, whatever you need. I don't think either one of us could have anticipated hurricane management, case management as part of that offer. She performed magic with landlords to get housing for Katrina refugees. She could be challenging with her constant desire to make things better. She would often question why. The friendly visitor manager shared a time when she didn't want to fully complete her mileage timesheet because it would save time just to do the totals. And she reached out to me for like, what am I going to do? And I said, she needs the why. Tell her the boss said it's because the audit requires the other columns. And that was it. You just had to know, and in that she taught this manager so much about how important the whys can be. I'm grateful she followed my career. At Girl Scouts, she offered support with events, and at Hands-On Central California, she was enthusiastic in her support of what my husband calls my big ideas, like an affordable senior transit service. I asked her to research programs so we could create the best model for Fresno, and within 2 weeks, we had everything needed to form an advisory committee, map out the plan, write for funding. It was up and running, and she was one of the first volunteer drivers. Anne Vermel, who worked closely with her on Silver Transit, shared this story. I will always remember Sylvia as a voice of humor and sanity and among the most caring persons I ever met. She worried about my lack of exercise. And she said, "You can always move about. Dance a little while you're watching TV." And she proceeded to dance a perfect and equally absurd little dance in demonstration. I think of her often while dancing at my TV. Her clear vision, her ability to challenge where she saw challenge was needed, and her willingness to dance in the face of impossible odds. Hers was a very bright light. Being a leader is not easy, and it is a gift when a Sylvia is in your circle. She spoke truth to power whenever needed to guide my path. She taught me, never toss aside an application that is different from all the rest. First interviews do not reveal who the person really is. Give your gut a chance. Sylvia became the angel on my shoulder. Everyone has one guardian angel, I believe, but I had one that I could talk with. She was a treasure. One of the organizations we shared a love for was the League of Women Voters. Francine Farber, current co-president, shared these words with me. Sylvia was a champion, outspoken and courageous for any cause in which she believed. Her letters to the editor of the Fresno Bee were always strong, sometimes amusing, and a little on the complicated side. I always looked forward to reading them. She was a willing volunteer, and in addition to her voter work opening ballots at elections, she served on the League nominating committee. She was an ardent member of the League's housing committee and was especially interested in finding solutions for the unhoused. And then personally, she said, I admired her for her excellent posture, unlike mine, and loved her tasteful and unique choice of clothing and jewelry. She always looked so well put together. We will miss her spunk and spirit. From Maggie Furrow, former director of Wings, Sylvia had a gentle touch as she assisted people in completing their California ID and rental applications to become housed. Many volunteers are afraid to drive people to the DMV in their cars, but this was an assignment she enjoyed. And earlier in June, this popped up on my Facebook memories. It's from 2010. Sylvia wrote, "I'm concerned that No Name is looking for a new job. I'm worried he will never find one because he's the only man I have ever known that can't toot his own horn." After I left the traditional workplace, we were determined never to be just Facebook friends, so we'd schedule periodic catch-ups. When I called to schedule what would be our last time together, she requested a quiche brunch at my house. She had remembered having quiche 3.5 years prior at a farewell for a friend of ours. And I can hardly remember what I had last week for breakfast. So we never expected that to be our last conversation. My next call from Sylvia's phone was from Sky. I learned so much from Sylvia, and her final lesson, always treat every conversation as if it's your last, because you just never know. Ruth Bader Ginsburg said, "Whatever you choose to do, leave tracks. That means don't just do it for yourself. You'll want to leave the world a little better for your having lived." Sylvia left so many wonderful tracks in our community, and we were so blessed to have her.
Hello, my name is Chris, or Chrissy, as she mostly called me. And I want to thank you all so much for coming out today. Let's reminisce and celebrate my mom's life. Your presence means a lot to our family. And I know she'd be so happy that you're here. We may not know each other very well personally, but over the years, we've come to know a bit about you as she has shared the special people in our life. And knowing her, knowing my mom, she would have shared about us with you as well. I practice so much. If you walked into her home, she would have introduced you to her family through her skylight moving photo frame, her most treasured possession. That was the best gift she could have been received, for she loved to watch the family photos move every few seconds. And since we're all out of state, she often said it made her feel like she was living right alongside us. And as I look back over my life, I realized my mom gave me 3 loves that we have shared: the love of reading, the love of writing, and the love for fun that we found in saying the word yes. Growing up, I remember a dark green like recliner chair that sat at the opening of our living room, and next to that chair was an easy 10 or 20 books stacked upon one another for my mom's reading pleasure. As a young child, she took me to the public library every week, where she added books to her pile as well as books that we had read together. I also remember her reading to me at bedtime sections from her favorite book, Little Women, and tales of Jo and her sisters. My kids were even introduced to Little Women. At the age of 10, respectively, they took a flight. They took a flight out to visit Nana, where they were also introduced to Little Women at their bedtime. She loved to read books, so do I. I do not have a stack of 10 or 20 next to me, but a small stack of 2 or 3 at a time. And she never stopped going to the library, where free reading treasures could always be found. And even it continued to the last few weeks of her life. And I about can guarantee that Sky had to take a trip to the library to return the book she still had at home. Another love she gave to me was her love of writing. We know that joy of writing can overflow from being an avid reader, and that's exactly who my mom was, and inadvertently gave that gift to me as well. I love to write and encourage through others through devotions, where she would put her skill to a wider variety of uses: writing plays, letters to the editor, writing grants, helping with resumes, or just sending well-written notes and newsy weekly emails. Whatever words she put to pen and paper or keyboard, she used to enhance understanding, bring joy and encouragement to the lives of others. And I'm pleased to see that this gift continues down the generational line through my own kids, and I hope the love of books and written word will continue onward. The third love she gave to me is the fun that can be found in saying the word yes. As a child, I heard the word yes way more often than the word no, and her many yeses made my childhood home a place that I enjoyed being in, coming home to, and where my friends were welcome. My mom would allow us, me and my friends, to have free reign in the kitchen to create whatever came to mind, whatever we found in the pantry. We stirred together flour, syrup, salt, sugar, anything else that sounded promising, even cooking it, but we never actually ate more than a bite because it wasn't really good after all. As we grew, my brother and I were given the task of making one dinner a week. And I was not much an adventurous chef, or one at all for that matter, so I stirred up hot dogs and SpaghettiOs, which I'm sure their parents were thrilled with, but they never actually complained, so I was pretty thankful for that. I was nothing like my brother, who presented 2 meals that I distinctly remember: escargot one night, and casserole made with cow tongue for our protein source the second night. I will say the casserole was pretty good until he told me what was in it, and then I was done. But I was able to redeem myself when my best friend, who lived 2 houses down, Dawn, learned that I was allowed to cook and make dinner, for she was quite the cook at her young age. So together we brought to the table pork chops, twice baked potatoes, and some yummy dessert. There were some extra cheers that night. The fun of a yes mom also extended to my house for the sleepover house. Anytime I got new PJs, it became an excuse to have a sleepover. We would dance and play and then gather around the kitchen table with big bowls and all sorts of fun toppings to create our own piled high ice cream sundaes. And of course, our tummies our eyes were much bigger than our tummies, so in the morning, my mom would find all our half-eaten ice cream creations in the freezer. I'm thankful to my mom because she gave me the opportunity to learn, explore, and just have fun. For life has a lot of no's in it, so why not say yes a little more often? I try to be that kind of mom to my own kids and hope they have some unique memories tucked away from themselves. And even now, I have another opportunity for a go-around with my 2 grandboys. But why not say yes? And just see how many memories and yes, a mess we can make and create together. My mom's other skill that she tried to share, but I was never patient enough to learn, was her sewing skills. Even if I didn't pick up on this skill made for fun days in my childhood, she would buy used wedding dresses or prom-type dresses, cut them down to size for me and my friends to play dress up. We loved looking all grown up, accessorized with our plastic high-heel shoes. And Lauren, her granddaughter, was also the recipient of cut-to-child size play dresses that she enjoyed, as well as some special school dresses and jumpsuits for herself, and even her Barbies or her favorite doll just might be wearing the matching outfit. Thank you, Mom, for helping create my childhood memories from a safe place to be creative, learn confidence, independence, and for being a mom who said yes to a lot of fun in this child's life. This is a small snapshot of my mom from my childhood memories, and I'm thankful to have a bank full. My mom served me and our family in fun, beautiful ways, and yet I noticed as I watched her in later years in life that her character trait of serving her family also served her community. She served as she shared her love of books by reading to you if you're unable to. She served many years in the church library to share her love of books. She taught some how to study and pass the GED exam. She also gave her time to support the young through the CASA program. She was a voice in the Women League of Voters as a volunteer and gave rides to you who couldn't, so you can still get around town. She also led the UU Ladies monthly meeting, posing questions that created sharing and encouragement within the group. My mom, with her big heart, loved and served well. If my mom could meet a need, she did, and why not? For it's my pleasure, and I'm able to do so, was her perspective. I watched her honor God and people as she lived out this verse from Philippians 2:3-4. When you do things, do not let selfishness or pride be your guide. Instead, be humble and give more honor to others than to yourselves. Do not be interested only in your own life, but be interested in the lives of others. My mom honored the lives around her because she had a true interest and cared deeply for the people in her life. She left her imprint upon each one of us in different and unique ways. And as for me, I am challenged, and I want to challenge all of us to use our loves, our gifts, our talents to serve and love one another well. I can't think of a better way to honor my mom. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Paul Woodburne. I'm Sylvia's son. Thank you all for coming. I'm afraid that this might ramble just a little bit. No one's life is a story that fits the unified theme and with a through line that makes everything fit. But I guess what I want to say at the beginning, and I can tell it's already working, the last time I spoke at one of these things was for my mother's mother at her memorial service. And I had a nice set of readings set up I'd gotten from Khalil Gibran, talking about friendship and love and death. I thought it was very nice. And it all went well. I finished, and then the service was done. And at the end of it, one of my grandmother's friends come up and said, that was very nice, but I couldn't hear very much of it. So next time you do this, make sure to turn on the microphone. So we have. This is all. The death of a good person is like a stone, I think, in still water. The ripples stretch out. People feel the loss in many ways. I feel deep sadness, and I think, Chrissy, I think you expressed a lot of that quite well. On the other hand, the life of a good person is also a stone in still water. The ripples of them stretch out as well. People feel the benefits of having that person in their life in many ways. And I feel a deep love, appreciation, and fondness for what my mother was able to do for us. You, her friends and community, know the goodness in her and the positive benefits of knowing her, having known her. You also know the sadness of the loss that you feel in her passing. Ripples from her life and in her death are stretching out in myriad ways. Thank you again all for being here today. It means a lot to me and to my family. You all meant a lot to her. She felt the positive ripples of your good lives in her life. She was sort of damaged as a child, but she worked hard to overcome that damage and had a pretty good life. And I think she would say that she had a very nice life. But she had her issues, and she had her things that she could not fix. Holes made in you as a child cannot always be wholly filled. And here I want to say a special thanks to Sky. He understood Mom, I think, better than anybody else that she's ever met. Very happy she met you, and I'm very happy that you had a very nice life together. She was adopted when she was 11. Her stepfather was a very nice man. She described him as being more of the European sensibilities, and I don't know much more than that. She did not often speak about her young life very much. But for whatever reason, whether it was that he didn't want her around, whether this was the European thing to do, I don't know, he sent her to boarding school, which I always thought was very exotic when I heard about it as a child. That's very neat. But upon reflection and talking to Mom about it more in later life, she felt alone. She felt shipped away. And she would come back, and apparently there was some stress between her mother and the stepfather and all the three of them. And her mom one time said to her, "Do you want to break up this marriage?" And of course, Mom said yes to herself. What kind of weight is that to put on a child? That's not fair. As complex though as her feelings and memories were of her stepfather, she kept in contact over the years. Excuse me. And only many years later did she find out that he had kept all the letters that she had written to him over the years. Now, at the boarding school, you were supposed to write a letter home every week, and the person at home was supposed to do like an English grammarian and correct the grammar and send it back to you. But she felt very much sort of a sad happiness in realizing that he had kept all those letters, that she meant more to him than maybe she thought. On the other hand, it's kind of a little bit late to find out some of that stuff. Too late to fill those holes made when you're a child. In our family, we were not really given to talk about an afterlife. We did not come from a religious family. We did talk about why it was necessary and good to be good and kind to people, however. The subtext was that the importance of life is in the here and now, not in the hereafter. And if I can summarize perhaps this way, death is not the end of our influence on people. The influence can be for good or for ill. It is important to be concerned about the impact you have on the people in the here and now. And her impact, I think, was for good. In terms of her life, everything that she has done is still done. Everything she has loved is still loved. Everything we have learned from her is still learned. And as long as someone speaks her name, remembers who she was, remembers what she loved and what she taught, and what we have learned from her, she's not really gone. As Kathy and Chris and others have said, she poured herself into the here and now. One of my favorite record albums growing up was the Pete Seeger 1963 concert, We Shall Overcome concert at Carnegie Hall. And in the introduction to the title tune on that album, the We Shall Overcome song, he says, "If you would like to get out of the pessimistic mood yourself, I've got one sure remedy for you. Go help those people down in Birmingham, Mississippi, or Alabama. All kinds of jobs that need to be done. It takes hands and hearts and heads to do it, human beings to do it," he said. I think one of the ways she kept out of the pessimistic mindset her own self was to remember something. She often said we couldn't fix the world, but we could try and fix our own little corner of it. As you know, she was an intellectual. She was always interested in learning something new, and she could find something interesting and worth knowing in nearly everything that she came across. She never tired about trying to find out all about it in both the theoretical and kind of practical aspects. She often said she had a hard time toning down her vocabulary if she was talking to somebody who wasn't as educated as she was. You know, some people can do that well, some people can't. She organized her thoughts in an academic way from theory to observation, and her desire to help and find community was no different. She spent, I think, as Chris said, she spent a lot of time trying to find community. Sometime during my grade school years, I was trying to think back, and when I think it happened, doesn't really jive with when it sort of must have happened, but she had written and tried to publish a textbook for social studies for grade school and junior high school age kids about why it was you needed a government, for example. This was an outgrowth of her own master's degree in political science. Well, if you're all alone, you don't need a government. If you live in any kind of community, you do. It has been said that government is the name for things we do in society together to help each other. Her book was a theoretical expression of this, and her actions were her concrete expression of this. She looked, I think, to find value in herself by helping others. She was looking for a community. In grade school, she met me daily at home after school, usually with graham crackers and frosting, something like that, and often a neighborhood girl would come home with me. I think both of her parents worked, and she would stay with us for a while, and then she'd go home. She only lived sort of right around the corner, but, you know. And she would help me with my math. This was in sort of first through third, fourth, fifth grade. I was a very good reader. I didn't have to be helped in reading particularly, and again, that was in part due to her. But the math I never got, and so that help was ultimately futile, I think. And she helped Chris, too, with her schooling. Eventually, Mom got so upset with the same book being read to my sister's classroom for the third year in a row that she moved her to a small private school in town. I don't want to go into too much detail about it, and certainly Chris didn't mention it, but it was the best thing that ever happened to my sister education-wise. She learned sort of how to think, how to appreciate knowledge, how to appreciate reading, and all that kind of stuff. And as Kathy and Chris have both mentioned, Mom was involved in the League of Women Voters. She'd go to my elementary school. I remember, I didn't really know what that was, you know, the League of Women Voters. I sort of had a vague idea, but, you know, going to meet at the local school, local elementary school, to give over ideas, talk about what you're going to do, how to make the community a better place. We moved to a mountain community in the San Bernardino Mountains during my fourth grade year, and she assisted my Cub Scout den mother during this time. Our dues were like 10 cents a piece. There were 10 or 15 of us. So for $1.50, this woman was supposed to have a bunch of activities for us to do. Mom called it sort of trying to make do with our dumb little dimes. So she helped out. And as I said, you know, she was an intellectual trying to learn new things. One evening, out of the blue, she took us to a local Greek heritage festival. I don't know any Greek people. I didn't want to go where I didn't know anybody or have any real reason to be there. She thought it'd be interesting and stimulate some interest and, you know, maybe stimulate my interest in Greek food. As Chris mentioned, and I'd forgotten about this, but she did ask us to contribute a night a week. I remember the escargot. I don't remember the tongue, but I do remember making braised lamb shanks. So I've always liked to cook, and so to this day, I love Greek cuisine, and I never had any of it up to that point. And it was because of her, again, as Chris said, you know, saying yes, you know, trying something new. When I was getting my master's degree, a group of students and I were active in a couple of organizations, and nobody was going home for Thanksgiving dinner, so we all met and had sort of a big potluck. I brought Greek stuffed grape leaves that I made based on, you know, having been to this thing years ago, but I found this recipe in my favorite cookbook. It was a big hit. I got my first marriage proposal out of that. After my parents divorced, at some point she decided to become a teacher. This was not a successful time for her. She did not do well in the classroom. Her issue was discipline. She was a great teacher, but she did not think highly of herself, I don't think, to take the job that she should have taken. She took the first job that was offered as opposed to the job that she should have probably eventually taken. I think she did that for about a year, maybe two. But she still continued this notion of teaching, but more on a one-on-one basis. Eventually she met Sky, and eventually moved up to Course Gold, and there she tutored a number of kids. and developed quite strong bonds with them. It was just on her communication with them. She didn't do any discipline. But one of the kids, I can't remember his name now, was a bit of a pyromaniac and a bit of a thief. Among the things he tried to steal was food. Among the things he tried to burn down was the house. But she never begrudged him the food. She caught him with the matches and said, are you sure you want to be doing that? She wondered why he was going after the food and asked him, did you not have enough food growing up as a kid, a small child? And he was about 6, 8 at the time, Sky, I think, something like that. She was able to develop a trust between this child and her, and I think that saved that kid from early incarceration or perhaps an early death. So she got to educate her own special brand of discipline, works one-on-one, doesn't really work in a classroom setting. Looking for community, again, still. Moving to Fresno, and again, I'm not going to, Kathy said this a whole lot better than I could, and I did not know all the stuff that she had done. I did know that she had gotten involved with Catholic Charities. I did not know what she did, so thank you, Kathy. I was happy to know that. But I do know that she was honored on several occasions going through her stuff. I found several plaques of appreciation for her over the years. There's a big need for this type of service in the San Joaquin Valley. She also mentored several kids during her years as a CASA volunteer, and as Kathy talked about, the CASA volunteers are appointed by the dependency court to better inform the court and the judge as to how to deal with make informed decisions about the child who appear before them. And even just a few weeks before her death, she was still going to read to her friend Tony and drive her friend Sandy to where she needed to go and to get some exercise. And in Fresno, she did meet a group and she did find community. She found you. She loved you guys. You were very important in her life. As I said, we were not a family that dealt with, we're not a religious family growing up, but she liked even the Unitarian Universalist Church back in Riverside, back in Southern California. And we would go every year. The pastor there, for some reason, and I don't know the reason for this, maybe Tim, maybe you would know something about this, but this pastor would read always at Christmas time, Dylan Thomas's A Child's Christmas in Wales. I was going to quote a couple bits, I won't because it's getting too long, but I do not know why she loved this poem so much, or why, I don't know why it was read by the pastor at the church, but she loved some of the bits here. Towards the end of the one scene, there's been a fire in the house, and this old lady's house is being, the firefighters have come up and put out the fire, and they're all standing there amongst the cinders and the dissolving snowballs, and the firemen in their shining hats, and she looked at the firemen and said, Jim and I waited very quietly to hear what she would say to them. She always said the right thing, always. So she looked at these 3 tall firemen standing there, and she said, "Would you like anything to read?" After they put out the fire. Anyway, so I'm not sure why she loved that passage, but she did. And again, as Chris mentioned, she had her books. We read Johnny Tremaine multiple times, Little Women. She'd reread Rex Stout novels all the time. But she also had brand new books she always liked to read. She never, as an intellectual, she never stopped trying to learn new things. Perhaps the one good thing that COVID brought to us was Zoom. But I will say that I would be very happy if I never had to do another Zoom meeting in my life. But we do it all the time at work, and it's terrible. But what it did do is it allowed me, my sister, my son, his wife, to meet Mom weekly. And we would get together and talk for about an hour. And it was a way, one, just to catch up and talk to her and see her, but it was also a way to sort of get a bit of a feel for her health. How's she doing? Is she getting tired? Does she seems like she's mentally losing it? Where is she? Where is she? And that was very, very good. She was a very good letter writer. I wasn't such a good letter writer. Going through her stuff, I found lots of letters that I'd written in the past, but I haven't really written many currently. We do a lot more email. That doesn't feel quite as good. But she would also always be telling us about something that new that she had just read. Some of it was fiction, but a lot of it was sort of nonfiction stuff that was going on in a community, stuff that she wanted to get involved with, or something that she wanted to know more about. And as I said, Mom's life was hard. She was damaged as a child. I don't want to leave you with the impression, though, that her child was just anything but bad. Her mother's side of the family welcomed her very warmly. A wonderful group of people. I've only met them only once or twice, but they're wonderful people. She spoke frequently of her favorite aunt, her Aunt Bernice, who was her grandfather's sister, and her grandfather was one of her most favorite people. And I guess I want to quit here or close with a memory that is, as I said, it's not a through line, but as a memory that I wanted to end up with. It feels kind of important. My great-grandfather, Mom's beloved grandfather, had a farm in central Michigan. He had to quit school in 8th grade to run the farm. She visited quite a bit growing up. You saw some pictures of her with her grandfather there. He had a sugar bush on the farm in Michigan where he made maple syrup. This was the name given to this building by his wife, Grace. I never met her, but this was her name for the thing. He would bring in the sap from the maple trees on his farm and boil it down. I think he got 12 things of sap to make one thing of syrup. And only the vegetated syrup would be left. And he was very particular about how he made the syrup. She would take some of that brand new hot syrup and take it outside and pour it on the snow. It was solidified. She would eat it as candy, chew it up. And I think because she knew how hard it was to make maple syrup, she would often tell us around breakfast table, if we're going to have pancakes or waffles, to take a spoonful of syrup and put it on your waffles. No. We never did that. But every time and I love maple syrup, and every time I have my maple syrup, I think about my mother, and I think about my great-grandfather. For better or for worse, I guess I'm not much into introspection. But it's time like this when you find yourself reflecting on your own life and as I reflect on hers. I see many of the things I do, lessons she tried to teach me about helping other people, about not pushing down on those below you, but in helping to make those rungs of the ladder more accessible to those most needy. I hope I have helped you come to know her just a little bit. I hope I've made her proud. I know that I'm quite proud of her. I know that she will continue in my mind, and I will continue to speak her name for the rest of my life. Thank you for being her friends, her community, her people. She loved you all, and you made a big difference in her life. Thank you.
There are many memories in this room, and Sky wanted to have a time for brief sharing. If you have a story, a brief memory, or just how Sylvia touched your life as family member or as friend. Let's do please, Micheline, and if you come on up.
Hi, my name is Micheline Kernan, and I inherited the women's group, the UU Women's Group leadership role from Sylvia in January. And I was really very grateful to her because for a few months I could benefit from her wonderful advice and encouragement. This is what she was about, and I needed that, especially because I had big shoes to fill. I'm only a 5.5 shoe size. I think Sylvia may have been a 7 or 8, but it's not just that. It's that the women's group was Sylvia's baby. She had nurtured it over many, many years and turned it into a wonderful, loving, congenial, supportive community. And that was what I inherited. So that was something really big for me. As our fearless leader and dear friend, Sylvia was an inspiration to all of us for a life very well lived. She enriched our group with a genuine interest in people, her ever-inquisitive mind, and her quick sense of humor. And most of all, maybe her unflappable spirit. It may be what I'm going to remember and I cherish the most about her at the very end. her unflappability and curiosity. At our March meeting, it was going to be the last meeting that she would be with us. And she was talking very briefly, matter-of-factly, just like any other experience to have. She was talking about her illness and her impending death. She knew it was coming. And there I was sitting next to her, and I turned to her and I listened to her words. And what she said will stay with me forever. She said, "I'm not afraid of what's to come. I'm curious." I am curious. Now, that's a real lesson for all of us. What an inspiring and wonderful way to face the last chapter in her life and enter the mystery of death. To this day, Sylvia, wherever you are, may you now enjoy the new mystery novel of yours. Thank you, Sylvia. You'll be remembered, lovingly remembered and cherished forever. Thank you, all.
Ken.
Hi, I'm Ken Ma. Sylvia and I served together on the bookshop committee here at church for many years, a couple of them as co-chairs. There were several months when staffing was short in the bookshop, and one or both of us were there every Sunday. I have many great memories of our interactions over the years. Sylvia was warm and welcoming, fascinated by life in general, and focused on you in that particular moment. I could almost recognize her letters in the Fresno Bee without seeing her signature first. She had a heart for those who suffered injustice and iniquity, and she railed against the loss of civility and critical thinking in public discourse, sometimes with biting wit. I laughed out loud at those parts of her letters. She always made her point. It was a gift to know Sylvia, and I'll miss her presence.
Thank you all for coming and celebrating my mother-in-law's life. It reminded me when I was meeting with family, and Sky said it was about 4 months back in November, and they basically gave the diagnosis and said you've got probably 4 to 6 months to live. Well, my wife was scheduled for back surgery in November, and she would always come out sometime around June to visit. And when she heard the news, she said, "Mom," she goes, "you got to hang on." She goes, "I can't travel for another 12 weeks. You've got to hang on." And Sylvia, being Sylvia, hung on. Chris came out in March, last meeting, and within 2 weeks she was gone. But that was Sylvia. Her daughter asked her to hang on, and she did. And that's a remembrance we get to keep with us forever. But thank you.
Nancy?
So my name's Nancy, and I'm a member of this church, and I am a member of the UU Women's Group. And I want to share a funny story about Sylvia. So I do a lot of international volunteer work. And before I go, maybe a couple months ahead of time, I send out a note by email, and it's called Give a Dollar, Help a Young Scholar, because wherever I'm going, I'm taking like school supplies or something. So one Sunday, right out there, Sylvia says, so I hear you're doing some kind of fundraising. And I said, well, I'm just, I collect things to take when I'm going different places. And she said, well, how come I haven't heard about it? No, how did I have to hear about it from somebody else? I said, well, I send it out to, a group of friends. I'm not your friend? I said, okay, you are my friend, because of course she was. And she said, so tell me about it. So I told her, and she said, so it's called Give a Dollar, Help a Young Scholar. She repeated. I said, yes, it is. Well, let me see how much I have. Okay, usually maybe you'd have, I don't know, $5, $10 or something. She had like $1.47. I said, Sylvia, please, you don't even think about it. She said, well, where are you going? I said, Nepal. She said, Nepal? And I have $1.47. That can buy a lot of things in Nepal. Anyway, I will tell you that she sent me a check. And it was very generous, and it was very much more than $1.47. I told you keep your $1.47, But that, she was so generous. She was so generous, and she was so kind, and she did not mind just speaking right up, right? What, I'm not your friend? And put you right on the spot. We just really love her a lot, and we're so grateful for all of you and everything that you did to, enrich her life, that let her enrich the lives of so many others. Thank you.
Sylvia was my mother-in-law too. And she was in my life for about 40 years. But the one memory that I keep coming back to was very early on. And I just really want people to know what kind of person she was. We moved to Riverside, California, just after the birth of my first son. He was only about 4 weeks old when we drove cross country, and we settled at the university so that my husband could go back to school, and we were really without much of a support system of any kind. We were there pretty much on our own, and we got hit by the worst flu bug I think we've ever had. Both of us, both Paul and I, had to take to bed and couldn't raise our heads off the pillow, and just, nausea and dizziness and an infant to take care of, and we were just at a loss. And we called Sylvia in Fresno or Coarse Gold or some way the hell away from us, and said, is there any way you could come help us, because we're really, we could get through this, but we have this child who needs someone. We cannot take the downtime to get well and not take care of him. And she drove 8 hours without question, without hesitation. She was there the next day, and that was the kind of commitment she had if you were one of hers. And, to be kind of an adopted daughter was really to have a safe place and a security that was very, very meaningful to me. And I know that that's really the bottom line that all her friends and family are remembering today. She will be missed.
Hello, my name is Lori Linder. I worked with Sylvia at Senior Companion. What a blast that woman is. I'm telling you, we laughed a lot. We had our moments that we cried. She was so full of compassion and empathy. She loved that volunteer job she had. And what an honor it was for me to meet her. And Kathy and I, we just spent so much time loving that time that we had to be with her. I'm excited because Sylvia taught me a word. And I think I had to ask Kathy what it meant. And I probably won't pronounce it correctly, but I'm going to try. Advertisement. Do you know what that is? In California, we say advertisement. So I went home and I told my husband, you won't believe what Sylvia calls advertisement. He enjoyed that too. So I decided that it was time for me to find a job that was close to my home. So I shared this with Sylvia. She wrote me a letter of recommendation. And I swear it was because of that letter I got that job. And I retired from that job. Love Sylvia. I know you're all gonna miss her. Thanks.
One of the greatest gifts that Sylvia has given each one of you, given us, is the gift of all of these memories and so many more. And as living memories, we possess the greatest gift that anyone can give another. It is to each of you then that these living memories of Sylvia are committed. This is how Sylvia lives on. And so I invite you to respond, we remember her. In the rising of the sun and its going down, we remember her. In the crash of the waves and in the stillness of the seas, we remember her. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we remember her. In the opening of the buds and in the rebirth of spring, we remember her. In the blueness of the skies and in the heat of summer, we remember her. In the rustling of the leaves and in the beauty of the autumn, we remember her. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we remember her. When we read a good mystery novel, visit the library, attend a musical, vote our conscience, or offer compassion to a child or senior with special needs, we remember her. When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember her. When we are lost and sick of heart, we remember her. When we have joys and special celebrations we yearn to share, we remember her. So long as we live, she too shall live, for she is part of us as we remember her.
Sylvia, smile for me, fill my world with poetry. Forget those faraway dreams that haunt you. Sylvia, young in years, let the sunshine dry your tears, and we will walk in the wind and stars. smile again. Without you, the sun will shine. I need your love, oh Sylvia.
I'm going to try to demonstrate just a little bit because, oh, so often she would ask me questions, why this, why that, why that. Since I was mechanically and engineering inclined, I could maybe answer many of them. So, perhaps when she was about 8 or 9, I hadn't even thought about this until some of you reminded me. She wondered, I guess she asked her mother, or she saw a gas station, for example, where people were filling up their tanks and cars. And she wondered, how do they know where to put the pump? Right over the gasoline? I would say, no, there's no hole there where they could pump it out. They refine it and dig it out of the ground as oil and refine. Well, I didn't know that as a child. I mean, she knew it now, but I'm saying to you, not as an 8-year-old. She thought that curiosity, she's going to ask her mother to get the gas right out of the ground there and put the pump right over it. No, doesn't happen that way. There were so other many things that she was curious about, and I'm going to tell that now. About 8 years ago, she also got a real curiosity, very curious all of a sudden about the heavens, about the stars, about the constellations, about the moon. She wanted to know about them. And I said, well, we can go out and look. And yes, I've been out there a time or two. I've looked at them. And it started just as a conversation at first. But as the weeks and months drew on, she'd come back to that same topic. She'd go outside and say, Sky, come out here. Where's Jupiter? Well, I don't know exactly. Well, where's the Southern Cross? Well, eventually, you see, she got herself a little diagram that you could dial around, and she could start to answer these questions for herself. So she'd go outside, and this is over an extended period now. It's not like it. So she'd go outside, and she says, Sky, come out here. I think I found the Southern Cross. Probably so. And she'd say, where's the Big Dipper? Well, it's over there in the north. Oh, okay, let's turn around and look at that. This overriding interest in planetary matters and moon matters. So she'd go out and look at the moon all the time. I mean, this carried on, let's say from about 8 years ago up until 3 days before she passed away. I mean, I would take her out then. Sky, got to go out and look at the moon. I can't go to bed until I look at the moon. And they say it's in a certain place. Some nights she couldn't see it, of course, but many nights she could, half moon, full moon, part moon, whenever it was in our part of the universe to see. And she would gaze at the other stars. I remember one time she heard that there would be a lecture about Jupiter at State University, and they had a telescope set up, and you could see Jupiter. She said, we got to go. Over there we went. Got in line, she saw Jupiter. Now, oh yeah, that's in the telescope, there's Jupiter. And I think it's real bright, too. It was obviously bright, close to the Earth. So now we can go home and we can look in a certain part in the sky, and right next to it is Saturn. She learned that in the lecture. See, curiosity, 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 all the time. Never shut it off. I mean, wouldn't let me rest half the time. He had another question she's going to ask. So then I got to thinking about this curiosity, and then I remembered something else that she told me before this all started to happen. She told me, she started to tell me a story. I'm getting a little ahead of herself. At one point in time, we turned on the radio where we dialed up a CD, for example. And in a New York second, she was singing that song. Singing the song, the chorus, the lyrics, all 4 stanzas, everything, singing it. So when she finishes, I said, well, that's an interesting song. Actually, yeah, it's about stars, sun, moon, I like that. Well, what prompted you to like that? She says, I just like the song. The lyrics are somewhat comical. It made me happy. She's always wanted to be happy and make others happy. So I learned the song, and I sang it to myself, and then by and by, I started singing it to the young kids, Paul, Chrissy. And they were toddlers, perhaps. And when I sang it, they always say, sing it again, Mommy, I want to hear it again. You know where I'm going? Don't give it away. So she says, I just like the song. My kids liked it. Anytime I dropped into the song or heard it on the radio, I would start singing it. Anybody I was with, you could be middle age, old age, doesn't make any difference. I like the song. She could recite that song till the day she passed. She learned it early on and she passed. So if she were here today, in spirit she is, of course, because we remember her, she would say, Sky, I want you to play that song. And you know, Sky, the song I'm talking about. Yeah, I know, Sylvia. I know the song you're talking about. You played it all the time. I enjoy the song. I tried to learn the song one time, got halfway through it, and then didn't finish it. So I want you to play the song because I want the people that you're talking to right now, I want them to feel uplifted after this service. I want them to feel that their sadness has been somewhat removed from their life. And so, Sky, please play the song and I would say, okay, darling, here it comes and here's the song. but her spirit, her soul, those qualities inside of us which make us human. Is there any doubt that she isn't swinging on the stars, moonbeam down? Not in my mind. She's there. She's there. And as we just did, celebration of her life, what better way to celebrate? Let's clap again. Celebration.
So in just a moment, we will be ending our celebration of life. And what we're going to do is invite the family to line up back in the entryway of the church. And then everyone else, they're eager to meet you. So you'll pay your respects through the receiving line, head outside the church, go to the left, and you'll come back in through these doors. There's lemonade, cookies, and fruit for you to enjoy. And a chance, again, to continue to share memories and celebrate Sylvia swinging on a star. So I invite us, in respect for Sylvia, to please stand for our closing words and our release. And now, into the hands of time, we release Sylvia J. Woodburne. Having left us now, she goes free of the earth into the big eternal yes, where she is swinging on a star. And for us, the living, may our love for Sylvia be witnessed, renewed, and strengthened on this day and henceforth in our caring and love for others and for this earth, so that, like Sylvia, we may be part of the world's hope and not its fear, its love and not its hate, and so that we may know in new and deeper ways the great spirit of life that connects us all. May it be so. Blessed be. Amen. Invite the family to process.